Hey, my name is Ben Horsley. I'm the Communications Director for Granite School District. This is a Q&A. We've done a few of these on the Facebook social media platform. They've been tremendously helpful and successful, thousands and thousands of views, good questions and good feedback. But ultimately, not all of our families have access to that platform or want to go look for these Q&As in that location. In addition to that, we want to make sure that we're sharing information equitably among all of our families, so we wanted to provide a format that was just sitting on our website that anybody could come back and reference at any time. We've also posted this and set this up at a time in the evening when most families hopefully will have accessibility to it. Again, if that is not feasible, then again, you can always come back and watch it, and that's going to be just sitting on our website. To be clear, if you go to graniteschools.org, there is a bulletin item at the very top that says Return Steps to Returning Schools Safely. And this is where this video, as well as a plethora of other materials, is housed. I'm going to be talking fast because there's a lot of questions. I literally have pages and pages of questions. We solicited those questions when we sent home the State Health Department guidebook last week, and you guys have come through like champs and provided a lot of good content and questions. So with respect to that, I'm going to reference that manual in a little bit. I actually have a printed version here, and I'm going to go through and just talk about that in a little bit. But I want to go through as many of these kind of questions as we possibly can. That being said, I do want to reference a couple of slides from a couple of presentations today, and then some other materials that are sitting housed on that link. So with that in mind, this is not intended to be any sort of professional look-see. If you go to our website here, this is just very raw video, but just right here under that featured bulletin, you're going to see steps for and plans for a safe school year. There's a bunch of resources here, including the State Health Department COVID School Manual. This is an infographic that summarizes a lot of the information and a lot of other information. This is the state's requirements for template for us to be able to return to school, and you can see a lot of different videos available on this website talking about distance learning, how we're going to socially distance in halls, what distance learning will look like, and how we go back vice versa, sanitizers, school buses. A lot of great information on that website. So I just wanted to point that out to you. We don't want to spend a ton of time and money producing some fancy video. What we want to do is provide good quality information and be able to address a number of questions. Before I really get into the heart of these questions that I have compiled and put together, I want to speak for a second and lay out a picture for you, if you don't mind. And this actually stems from Lindsay, who submitted a question. She says, after watching a lot of the board meetings and some of the other videos, it's clear that one of the reasons we're reopening schools under a traditional schedule. To be clear, we're not opening schools under a traditional schedule. There's nothing normal or traditional about what school is going to look like. I'm going to talk about that a little bit more later. There are a lot of our students, because of their at risk, depend on in-person instruction, safety, and nutrition. I completely understand and empathize with this, but she indicates this is not how the plan is being presented to the community. And so I think she's right. I think she's making a valid point here. What I want to do is paint a good picture for everyone about what not only school is going to look like and how different that really is, but also what school looked like for many of our students here in Granite School District. If you're not aware, Granite School District runs from about 21st South to 62nd South, mountain to mountain. So roughly 3,500 East, Olympus Cove area, all the way down to 105th West, and right there in the heart of Magna. That's 355 square miles. That's 90 plus schools and 62,000 students. So let me just paint a picture of what last spring looked like. Our teachers did this amazing job of putting together quality distance learning materials, and by and large did that in a short amount of time. Incredible creativity and hard work and dedication to produce distance learning materials just literally overnight. I just cannot say enough about how awesome our teachers are in putting those things together when school was dismissed on March 13th to get us through the last 2.5 months of the school year. But in that time frame, over 12,000 of our students never logged on, never spoke to another teacher, never even communicated with the school. Now, is that the child's fault? Is it the child's responsibility for that? No, absolutely not. Is it the family's circumstances that might have prevented them from being able to engage and provide any sort of instruction? Yeah, some of our families, frankly, are in dire circumstances with poverty, other challenging circumstances that we can't even begin to fathom or understand from some of our perspectives. That being said, in addition to those 12,000 plus students who never engaged, again, despite our efforts to get them a Chromebook, despite our efforts to get them a hotspot, provide mobile hotspots, Wi-Fi buses, information on free Wi-Fi, come to the school and sit in the parking lot and access the Wi-Fi from the building. That was not the issue. Some of these families literally had no choice but to send some of those kids to work to help provide for their family. 12,000 kids. Okay, we're not talking about a handful of kids here. 12,000 kids we know never engaged in distance learning. Now on top of that, add another 8 to 10,000 kids who only slightly engaged, and their learning was not really truly engaging or successful despite the incredible efforts being made by our administrators and our wonderful teachers. They just did not have the supports at home to be able to make that happen. I don't want to beat a dead horse here. What I want to do is paint and help people understand that if we just solely go as part of our plan to a distance learning format, even a hybrid format, we are simply telling 12,000 and up to 20,000 of our students that you don't matter, that we just simply cannot provide those services for you. Sorry, you're out of luck because of your family's circumstances. And I'll tell you right now, as a kid who came from impoverished circumstances, that wasn't my fault, and it's not these children's fault. Ultimately, at the end of the day, we are an educational entity, and our obligation, our core mission, is to educate kids. And many other organizations in the community have reminded us of this obligation as we prepare these plans. And so with all due respect for those who want just one option, I had a parent communicate to me in a school that had 16 out of 500 some odd kids who wanted to utilize the distance learning option, and they wanted to make that decision for those other 500 kids that had chosen to utilize an in-person instruction for whatever reasons. That's not our business. We're here to provide options. We're not here to tell people how they will get their learning. And that would be wholly inappropriate on an equity basis, considering individual circumstances in our families, to say this is the only way you're going to be able to access education when we know that that doesn't work for many, many of our students. Again, 12,000 students who just never were able to participate in distance learning at all. So as we take these, Lindsay's absolutely right. Just want to point that out. There are many families who can do a fine job of learning at home for this temporary period of time. No serious detriment to learning will be had. I want to encourage families as a result of Lindsay's email. If you can utilize the distance learning option and that works for your family, we would encourage you to do so. We certainly recognize that there are risks to in-person instruction. The health department has made that abundantly clear with respect to the information and the guidance they have given us. That being said, we cannot afford to lose 20,000 kids and lose this, not just the summer slide, but quarters and quarters of instruction and have that be a detriment, not only to those individuals, but to our community as a whole. So that being said, I have a couple other emails here I'm going to go through just real quick that kind of relate to this. This is from Ashley. She really wanted us to go to that hybrid option. Again, with respect to the fact that students, some of our families just cannot utilize that option. We're providing as many options as we feel will meet the needs of our families. So if you don't feel comfortable bringing your kids back into the classroom based on whatever information you have or your personal family circumstances, there is no judgment. We are so here to support you and provide you with these quality options for your families, but at the same time recognizing that some families have no other alternative but to send their kids back to school. They don't have the ability to access daycare. I heard a heartbreaking email from a single mother who can't afford she needs to go to work. She cannot stay home and provide help and support for her kids' instruction as much as she would like to. And so her family has underlying condition in her extended family, so they can't watch and support her kids in that way. She needs an in-person instructional option. And so that's what we're here for, is to make sure kids get the instruction that they need. And we have been threatened in no uncertain circumstances that we should be making sure all of our students have equitable access to education. So that's what our plans are based on, is flexibility, but at the same time meeting this family's needs and this family's needs, or a mix of both of those kind of circumstances. So that being said, some people have said moving the date will help improve circumstances. We had an administrative kickoff meeting today at Cottonwood High School for all of our administrators, and we actually discussed this at length. I'm actually pulling up a presentation here where this was discussed. And this is such a weird year, right? This is such a unique circumstance. All of us are nervous. There's nobody sitting over at the district office just saying this is going to be cake, because we know we have spent thousands of hours preparing these plans and producing materials to help our principals and our teachers get things off the ground when August 24th happens. We've heard tons of commentary from armchair quarterbacks, from experts in a variety of places. We're focusing, I want to be clear, our guidance and our experts are the state health department and the county health department. Gary Edwards and his team over at the Salt Lake County Health Department, we constantly communicate. We're throwing scenarios, we're bouncing ideas, we're asking for help on certain situations. We are not health experts, and we will continue to rely on the health guidance from the wonderful resources at the state level, Dr. Angela Dunn and her team. All the data that we've shared on health-related cases coming down in the community, literally shared directly from the Salt Lake County Health Department. We conference call with them on a variety of platforms from the Salt Lake County Emergency Operations, which has daily briefings as well. We're focusing our information and guidance from the state health department. That is where our guidance comes from. So with due respect to those of you who say we should look to a health expert, it is Dr. Angela Dunn. Who frankly has indicated in a most recent press conference that she feels comfortable sending her children back to school. Does that mean you should send your kids back to school? No, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is we do have health guidance. We do have health experts giving us guidance, and we're going to continue to prepare plans to support you in any way we can, whatever options you avail yourself of. So that being said, we're going to be able to get through this as a community. What I want people to understand, there's a lot of people think, well, if we just wait 3 months, or if we just push back to this date, if we just push back to this date, that somehow things are going to be improved. And I hate to be cynical in this way, but with due respect, our plans are not based on this improving in 3 to 6 months. Okay, our plans are based on circumstances not changing for 3 to 6 years. Okay, we expect, just like when we went from red and orange back to yellow, I think some people seem to assume that cases were going to go down. That was certainly not the expectation of our state officials. They knew cases would come back up and that we would have to balance that out with the loosening of restrictions. And we have done an awesome job as Salt Lake County residents with the mask mandate. That has brought cases down. According to the county health department, on a call I was on just last week, they indicated that caseloads are down 44%. I saw some information from Spencer Cox, our lieutenant governor, just this morning, indicating that hospitalizations statewide are down, and there's a lot of other positive indicators out there. Are we out of the black, or out of the red and into the black? No, and that is not my role to indicate. I'm never going to be able to say that. I'm just relaying some of that information. That being said, in the next week or two, cases could absolutely spike. So are we ready for that? Do our plans address that? Um, we talked about months ago of flattening the curve. As a state, we're doing a great job of that, but there was never any talk of eliminating this altogether. That just was not in the realm of possibility in terms of what experts were indicating. So our plans as a school district are based on a long-term expectation that this pandemic is going to be around for a while. And we need to have plans in place that are flexible enough to adjust to whatever comes our way. A spike in cases, a flattening of the curve, or something in between. And so we have produced that. We have three different schedules we can utilize. We full dismissal, full in-person instruction, and then right where we're planning on starting, which is giving parents the option of both in-person instruction or distance learning. So with respect to that, we're going to get through this as a community, but waiting does not guarantee that somehow things are going to be improved somehow. And so we have to prepare for the worst, and that's what our plans work through. Again, our guidance issued by the state health department, all of our plans are based on this information, and school level plans are based on the frameworks that's given to us by that. They aren't armchair quarterbacks. Dr. Angela Dunn is an expert, and I have full faith and confidence in the information she's providing, which is housed in this awesome handbook that we've sent to all of our families and our employees. As we kind of gone through the training today, we reminded principals there was kind of three components to that. There's responding to cases that potentially will crop up in our schools. That's the expectation. There's no hiding that. We're not trying to say that in-person instruction is going to be perfect. There is absolutely risk. We live in a pandemic now, and so we have to deal with the new normal, which is by virtue of going to the grocery store, there is risk. By virtue of going and attending school in person, there's going to be some risk. Our goal, and in accordance with the guidance we've gotten, is to mitigate that risk to the highest degree possible. How we're going to handle and prevent spread of disease in our schools. And then the last component is how we're going to handle outbreaks when they do occur. So I'm going to talk about all three of those things. There is no question, unequivocally, and this is a question that I have here, masks and 6-foot social distancing is optimal, but that is not possible in every situation. And the health department, again, has indicated that that is an acceptable, mitigatable risk. Because that's why we have a mask mandate. I hear from teachers indicating there's no way I can socially distance my kids 100% of the time. We're not expecting you to be able to do that. We're going to try to do that. Our plans work to mitigate and create social distancing. There's not going to be large gatherings on our school property. We're going to isolate classrooms as much as possible. But at the end of the day, the mask mandate is intended to address the fact that 6-foot social distancing is not possible in every situation on school property. Health departments issued this manual knowing that this will not be possible in our schools. They have not said to modify schools or close schools when 6 feet social distancing is not possible. They have never indicated that. So what they have told us is, you do your job, we'll do ours. Their job is to handle contact tracing, evaluation of individual cases and those risks that are posed, and then make recommendations to schools appropriately, which is again highlighted and spelled out. There's 40 plus pages of simple scenarios. What happens if this happens, if there's exposure in my classroom, with my kid's sports team, in this particular situation? This manual is easy to read. There's great graphics. There's clear instructions. There's only one issue with this, and we're going to come back and talk about that in just a second. But I want to just assure our watching public here that we're not making decisions willy-nilly. All of our decisions have and will continue to be based on the best guidance we've received from the state and local health departments. And if and when we do see cases of exposure within our schools, which is to be expected because we are in a world that is in a global pandemic, that we will adhere to the guidance that they have given us and follow their protocols as outlined in the guidebook. That is our goal and our commitment to our community. That being said, the health department's also told us, stay home when you're sick. And so that's one thing we really want to remind parents that they can do in order to stay safe and help keep our teachers safe, which is a critical component of our operations, and is the safety and well-being of our teachers. So stay home when you're not feeling well, even if it's just light components. One question we've gotten here, and I want to go to that one just really quick, is with respect to, sorry, I was just pulling this up. You know what? It's right there, but are masks going to be required at all times on school property? And the answer is unequivocally yes. So what does that look like at the secondary level? This is a constant question we're getting. It's going to look like a dress code violation. When somebody's violating dress code, a young man's wearing a tank top shirt or shorts that are too short, whatever. We bring that student down to the front office. We give them an option to cover up additionally. In this particular case with the mask, we'd offer them a mask. And if they're unwilling to wear that mask, unequivocally, we will alert that family, those parents, and that student what their distance learning options are. The state health department has made it clear that students cannot be in schools without masks. Additionally, they've indicated to us that students who are asking for a mask exemption probably should not be in schools either. If your student has asthma, if your student has some other underlying condition and can't manage that mask, I'm not talking about special education students, I'll get to that in a second. What I'm talking about is students with other underlying conditions. If the mask is an issue and you're looking for a doctor's exemption, we do have a form for that. You can work through the schools to get that taken care of. We're going to encourage you to utilize a distance learning option as well, because we don't want to bring students into the school building who perhaps have some of those conditions and issues. So that's something you can work through in the schools. I'm going to go through, so yes, masks required for all. Required means required. At the elementary level, how are we going to mandate that? With a lot of love and patience. And I get criticized for saying that, but I'm not sure how we would. You know, I have a 6-year-old, I have a 9-year-old, and I have an 11-year-old, as well as some high school students in my home. As we have worked to prepare them for the upcoming school year, having them wear their masks often to get used to that. They're doing an awesome job doing that. Are there slip-ups where that mask falls below the nose? Absolutely. Where they play around with it? Yes. And if you're a parent, you know and understand this. If you're an elementary teacher, you know and understand this. A lot of love and patience is going to be required in order to help facilitate and help those students keep their masks on. Going to the question of cleaning supplies, and just pulling up this question. This is a great question from a lady by the name of Kim. So Kim, I went back to Don Adams, who's our facilities guy. He's over all of our maintenance component. I'm actually going to pull up a slide here with respect to cleaning schedules. We went through and trained our principals on that today. They're going to go back out to their school staffs and prepare teachers and custodial staff on what that's going to look like. They also asked about the question of cycling in outside air. Pre-COVID, we were already bringing in a full 100% fresh air from the outside 3 times an hour into our schools, and that's going to continue. We're actually going to run those air conditioning ventilation systems, fresh air, full fresh air exchanges into our schools 24 hours a day, because it's the right thing to do. That being said, our filters that we use to filter that air will also be upgraded. Kim was asking about what kind of, let's see, I want to make sure I go back to her question. She says, air filters that filter out particles that are as small as 0.003 microns. She talked about IQ Air, Austin Air, Air Dr. Pro, a lot of technical language. I'm going to break it down for you. The filters are, there will be an increase in fresh air flow and increased filtration. We will be using MERV 14/14A filters. These are hospital grade filtration systems. We will also be implementing an engineered water solution. So what that means is, in addition to the regular classroom supplies that we're going to provide to our teachers in their respective classrooms, we're also going to be providing our own developed engineered water solution. So we want to make sure that the chemicals used in our classrooms are not only effective, but they're safe. And so In addition to traditional cleaners that we've always been using, such as spick and span, those obviously play a valuable role. We're going to be working towards developing our own engineered water solution that electrolyzes the water and allows for a sanitation mixture to be created that's safe for students. So that being said, she wanted to make sure she listed a whole bunch of different components of disinfectant, EPA's guidance, and we agree wholeheartedly, Kim, we're going to be addressing and adhering to all those guidance and requirements. That being said, I did hear from a teacher just a little while ago. They indicated regretfully, I don't know where the miscommunication is happening. They were told that they would only receive so much cleaner per year. I want to be really clear, you're not going to be limited to the amount of cleaner specifically for the whole entire year. We have plenty of supplies. We actually literally in our warehouse right now have all the cleaning supplies we need for the full year, plus our own the ability to create our own sanitizer that will kill COVID and other common germs and viruses that are found in our schools. So apparently this teacher was told that by their administration they would only receive 2 bottles for the entire year, and they indicated they were going to have to go buy their own purchasing supplies. Please don't go buy purchasing. We have plenty of cleaning supplies for our teachers and for our schools. I want to be unequivocal about that. He indicated that they still have the old fabric towels in our room. We're getting rid of those as fast as we can. We do have a limited maintenance crew, but we do not expect people to use the old fabric towels. We will either have paper towels in place before the start of the school year or those hand air dryers. Last but not least, when we don't have the ability to replace those, there's going to be lots of hand sanitizer throughout the entire school. So when you go into a business now, you kind of see the instructions laid out on the floor, how to socially distance. Your schools are going to look just like that. And you're going to see hand sanitizing stations throughout the building. So I had a parent call me and ask, how am I going to get 2,000 kids in a high school to wash their hands every hour? And the answer is we're not. We're going to have lots of hand sanitizing stations. They're already mounted in every classroom in Granite School District. And there's going to be additional stations put throughout the buildings as people walk into the building. They'll sanitize. They'll be able to sanitize throughout the course of the day. This teacher went on to say, I need to go to the store and purchase hand soap. No, do not purchase those supplies. Do not use your own funds and resources. We are providing all the necessary cleaning supplies, soap, and other materials, as well as PPE for our teachers. There should be no out-of-pocket expense for our teachers. They also indicated they were going to Lowe's to buy plexiglass. No, please don't do that. We have instructed our principals today at their administrative kickoff how they can order plexiglass barriers, similar to something you might see right here. We've installed many of those in our common areas, and we'll continue to provide those installations for teachers who need it. Maybe you're a teacher with underlying conditions. Maybe you need some additional divider options. We've looked at these kind of options in some of our classes where social distancing is not possible. There is no expectation for our wonderful teachers to have to supply those types of materials. Absolutely, unequivocally, that is the responsibility of the school district, and we anticipate providing those. When desks are actually tables in a classroom, when there is that kind of scenario, we'll be providing those dividers as appropriate. And administrators know, they were trained today on how to accept those requests from their teachers, and definitely would encourage teachers to reach out to their administrators as soon as possible with respect to that, and we'll make sure those get put into place. That's it. That's it for that particular question and teacher. But that might have answered a number of other questions for you as well. I wanted to make sure I go through the rest of this presentation. Let's see. A couple of things from the health department that they've asked from us. School districts will continue to work closely with the local elected school board and the health department before making decisions to temporary transition to hybrid or remote learning options. If you look at our plans, we do have a hybrid option and we have a full dismissal. And we anticipate, based on the guidance in here, again, a number of different scenarios when it talks about, the scenario examples here, pages, let me give you this example off of page 42, where it talks about exposure with a high school class with so many students in it, and it talks about the actions that the health department will take. There may be a situation, there's actually numbers and detailed on when they will actually call for a full dismissal because of the other contact, because of contact tracing, and because of social distancing measures that will be enacted in our schools. The idea is that we would only have to dismiss a portion of that class, the full class, a grade level, a portion of the student population that was exposed directly to that case, that confirmed case, and all that is spelled out right here in this awesome handbook. So this is the explicit guidance that we received. Only when the school can't provide a safe learning environment will the school need to consider temporary remote learning or closure. That is the health department's language. I'm going to say it again. Only when the school can't provide a safe learning environment will the school need to consider temporary remote learning or closure. The health department tells us in here when those conditions are met. And so we talk to our health department counterparts daily. They're so sick of us, I assure you. Right now, knowing our specific community, they are not recommending that any school or schools transition to hybrid or distance learning, remote learning. Again, families and our kids have options. We want to make sure that you utilize those options. Please stay home if it's appropriate for your family to be able to do so. I want to go over and talk about cleaning schedules now, just really quick. What that looks like. We trained our principals on it today, and again, our full custodial staff are coming together. I'm trying to make sure you can see this. That being said, I don't know if it shows up backwards on your screen or not. I didn't even think to check that, so I apologize. Custodial frequency cleaning, they're getting trained on all this tomorrow. Our incredible custodial teams on a daily basis. We'll be thoroughly cleaning all of our high-touch surface areas, doors, door frames, door handles, light switches, glass sinks, dispensers in all areas of the buildings, our restrooms, our locker rooms, our entrances, hallways, offices, providing trash removal, and the cafeteria. Food service workers will be assisting and be responsible to clean and sanitize lunch tables before and after lunch and between those shifts. So between when kids eat on those surfaces. That is our daily regimen every other day, literally to accommodate for COVID and the pandemic. We're adjusting how we address cleaning schedules to prioritize certain things like high-touch areas. So every other day you're going to go and custodial teams will be vacuuming, sweeping, doing faculty rooms in conjunction with the school staff, and then spraying the entire building. Every other day will be sprayed with the electrostatic sprayers at 583 parts per million. That is a high-grade strength cleaner. A deep cleansing will occur literally every other day. In case of an actual exposure, there's some additional cleaning protocols that come into place if and when that happens. And then there's some weekly protocols in addition to that. So those are spelled out. We're doing the training on that tomorrow for our custodial teams. We have a bunch of resources that we're going to provide in the classroom level. And yeah, there could be some experiences where a student might be asked to wipe down their desks after they're done with an activity. And we hope that students will understand that that is simply just part of keeping our working class environments safe for everyone and safe for them in particular. So again, if exposure occurs, we have a whole full protocol as outlined here in the state health department COVID manual. And then we will work to provide additional deep cleaning and spraying of those touch surfaces as appropriate. So I've gone through this question, kind of gone through this question. I've gone through this question already. So I want to go back to the modified quarantine. So one of the biggest questions we got was in relation to the term modified quarantine. You know, I work in schools. Sometimes I use EduSpeak. Sometimes I'm in an audience and I use an acronym or something that they may not be familiar with. And so on page 6, the state health department spelled out where parents may have the option to choose their kid to school during quarantine if their child doesn't have certain symptoms, and kind of talked about this notion of a modified quarantine. This was a huge concern that we got back. And to be honest, I don't want to try and explain that because I don't know. This wasn't our manual. I think people think that we produced this. This is from the health department, and I'm not throwing them under the bus. I'm simply acknowledging the fact that the health experts put this language together, and I think in attempting to explain something, they might have not explained it very well. And they probably thought they were doing that in layman's term. Bless their hearts. This manual is incredible, by the way. A lot of awesome information. So we've got some additional information and expect some additional clarification this week. We'll be forwarding that out as soon as we get it. But essentially, a modified quarantine does not delineate what many people think that it does. And so we did get some additional guidance. Looks like this came through Saturday. So just 2 days after the press conference. It says students and teachers, this is the clarification, this is really important. Students, teachers, or staff who test positive for COVID-19 will not be allowed to attend school. In the event of a confirmed case in a school setting, A, students, teachers, and staff who are wearing a mask and were able to physically distance are not considered exposed. Let me say that again. Students, teachers, and staff who were wearing a mask, I got my mask right here, right? And were able to physically distance are not considered exposed. Students, teachers, and staff who were not able to physically distance will be considered exposed, even if they were wearing a mask, and will be required to quarantine. So we expect some updated language in the next few days, and we'll be sharing that with our teachers, employees, and families as soon as possible. So that answers that question. Going down, I got a bunch more papers here. We're going to go as long as we can to kind of go through this. This question is in relation to what additional information or instruction will be provided on what students' distance learning schedules will be. So, as many of you are aware, our distance learning options at the elementary level, we asked that parents by Thursday, August 6th, at the elementary level designate whether their student will participate in distance learning or in-person instruction. So I had a teacher say to me, I don't even know if I'm going to be distance learning. They haven't even given me the option yet. And with due respect, we were kind of waiting to get that information back from our parents so we can know at the school level, that's at that decision level, how many distance learning teachers we're going to need. And so certainly there is space and options, and we've given some guidance to our principals on how to allocate distance and in-person instruction, what teachers should be considered for those specific responsibilities. That is a school level decision, and it will be made after those forms are due on August 6th. That being said, as we've kind of explained already, that sometimes our families struggle to communicate with us. And so invariably at all of our schools, there's going to be a handful or a bunch of families that need to be reached out to, and administrations will be working to identify those families who have not indicated their preference for distance or in-person instruction. And so they're going to have to follow up and take a few days to make sure that we know what those families' preferences are. And then hopefully by next week, those schools can start making those decisions. That being said, at the secondary level, families have the option to choose between which classes they want to participate in distance or in-person instruction. Not which days, but which classes they'd like to utilize in-person or distance learning instruction. So you should be hearing from your schools. We recognize that the form did ask you to delineate distance learning if that's what the option you wanted at the secondary level when you were going through the registration process. I don't believe that was abundantly clear, so please look for some additional communication from your schools. They may be giving you a form at the secondary level to be able to delineate and identify which those classes you'd like to participate in for distance or in-person instruction. This parent asked, if the distance learning option was chosen and the current situation changes between now and the start of school, will there be an opportunity to reassess the distance learning option? So in any situation and circumstance, what is really helpful for us is when parents communicate with us, when we can engage with the parents and understand their circumstances. Then we have the ability to be as flexible as possible and work to meet the needs of our families, which is ultimately our goal. So if you're an elementary parent and your circumstances dramatically change between now and the start of the school year, perhaps you've chosen distance learning option, and now because of circumstances, mom needs to go back to work and will be unable to provide that support at home, and now you need to utilize the in-person instruction. Please reach out to your school, even though that decision has been rendered and is supposed to be good through the first quarter. We certainly recognize that huge family circumstances can change literally overnight. And so we're going to work with you the best we can and work to help in those particular situations. So I think that answers that question. I'm going to move that over to the done pile over here. Kind of going through these still. This is from Nina. And we already talked about the modified quarantine, but then she went on to ask, is the district installing hospital-grade filters to increase air circulation in all schools? And she asked when. That has already been happening. And so that work is anticipated and expected to be completed before the start of the school year. And so that's been happening all summer. We knew that was going to be a necessity, and we've been working on that. She goes on to ask, are temperature checks going to be done daily on students? And the answer is no. The expectation from the state health department, we don't have the ability to do a daily temperature check on 60,000 students. However many are actually utilizing in-person instruction, 40,000, 30,000, whatever that number ends up being, it's still going to be in the tens of thousands on a daily basis. Instructional time is already going to be circumvented a little bit by cleaning and by social distancing. So we're already infringing on the actual in-person instructional time. That's just due to the fact that we're in a pandemic. I had a teacher the other day say, well, I'm not going to be able to engage with my students the way that I like to and the way that's effective. And I fully empathize with that. I want to put my arm around that teacher if it was possible in the midst of a pandemic and say, I get it. I get it. We want to be engaging. Any teacher knows, and I hear this all the time, our best teachers, I have opportunity to visit with them on a regular basis, and I know how they interact with kids. And doing so with a mask on, using social distancing to the highest extent possible, decreases that engagement and that instructional value to some extent. I'm so sorry. I feel that your passion and your desire to want to give your kids your awesome instruction, but we're in a pandemic and things are never going to be the way they once were. And so it's with all the sadness of my heart that I fully empathize with a teacher who is really disappointed that we're not going to be able to do things the way that we used to do them. And our schools are not going to look the way that they did 6 months ago. It's incredibly disappointing. And I can't emphasize that enough. That being said, because things are going to look different and because our instructional time is going to be hampered, we do not have the ability, getting back to the actual question, to provide daily temperature checks. The state health guidance asks that all parents, and we'll be reiterating this, do a daily symptom check and a temperature check at home prior to sending your kid to school every day. So check in your temperature. The temperature gives some very explicit guidance in here. Make sure they're not demonstrating any symptoms of illness before you send your child to school. We please encourage families to take that responsibility and take it very seriously. That's how we're going to maintain the health of our other students and just as important, our staff. And then it goes on to ask, are masks required in class? There's a lot of talk about masks being worn, but schools' documents leave it vague. If you feel that language is vague, she asked for a simple yes or no to enforcing masks in class. Yes, masks will be enforced. We did talk about that a little bit earlier, but Nina, I wanted to make sure that I answered that question for you. Going on to Anderson, A. Anderson's question. Thanks us for the manual, read the materials, wants to know about face shields. Will face shields be permitted in the place of cloth face coverings? On our website, that link I showed you earlier on in the webcast, in the stream, there's a whole link there to the Salt Lake County Health Department guidance and regulations on masks. I've heard about a variety of different masks, and every time I go to the health department, my friend over there, Nick, says, Ben, look at the website. We've already spelled this out. And I say, sorry, I should have checked that first. Sure enough, Salt Lake County Health Department has an awesome link that's linked on our resource page that explains what types of face shields are appropriate and will be acceptable, and which kind of face coverings are necessary and appropriate. So that being said, let me summarize it by saying this. Face shields they're not the same as masks. The health department has made this very clear on their website. I don't want to get into the nitty gritty. I'm not a health expert. I've never claimed to be. That being said, there are special education students, special education teachers, other individuals who might qualify to wear a face shield in lieu of a mask, I should say, based on their individual education plan. That's a special education plan, a 504 accommodation. And so I wear hearing aids. I don't know if you've noticed this. I struggle, even with hearing aids, to hear people through masks. And so sometimes I'll take a step back and really socially distance and allow somebody to pull down their mask so they can see, so I can see what they're saying, frankly. I read lips sometimes a little bit better than I hear. And some of our kids have the same circumstances as I am. It's easier for them to see expressions. Some of these things are challenging, but again, I'm so sorry. We're really trying to provide instruction in light of a pandemic that's not going away anytime soon. And so, with due respect to the question, face shields are not going to be permitted in most circumstances. Only in a few circumstances will they be permitted, and usually in relation to a special education IEP. Then Anderson asks about the MERV rating on those filters. I've already gone over that again, and will they be installed by the first day of the school year? And that is, in fact, the plan, and they're working on that right now. Just a few more questions. We're almost up to the hour here. This is from Jenny, and bless your heart, Jenny. You've sent me a lot of emails, and I am trying to answer all these questions the best I can. For secondary schools, what is the new normal schedule? How is that different from last year's schedule? The new normal schedule is at the secondary level is you get to pick which classes you participate using distance or in-person instruction. That is the biggest part of that. So I've had some families say, well, we really do want to utilize a hybrid where we come every other day. That's entirely up to you. You have that option available to you right now. Simply delineate on these days we're going to be doing distance learning, and on our B-day classes we're going to be doing in-person instruction. She goes on to say, if the option for in-school is selected, will be option change to distance learning? And we've gone over that. I don't want to spend too much time on that again. If the student is exposed to COVID and is required to quarantine, and they do in-school learning, will there be an option to continue learning from home during their quarantine time? And the answer is yeah. If they're on quarantine, I want to be clear. I had somebody give me grief over this, and so I want to make sure I'm explaining this clearly. If a teacher contracts the virus or is sick, let's just say pre-COVID. Let's go to a hypothetical before COVID ruined the world. And they were sick. We do not expect that teacher to provide instruction while they're sick. We do ask for help for layouts and some other things like that, instructional outlines for the substitute, but there's no expectation for the teacher to continue to work when they're actually sick. That has not changed. That has not changed. Comparably, for our students who are ill, there's no expectation for them to complete work when they're sick. We have health plans and other things for long-term illness pre-COVID. Now we're post-COVID, so nothing has changed in that regard. That being said, A student could be quarantined, a teacher could be quarantined and not allowed to come onto school campus because they're quarantined because of exposure to COVID. So how is that going to work? Then yes, we will transition them to a distance learning option and work to the expectation would be for that teacher to assist us, the substitute in that particular case, with the instructional materials, and continue to assist us in that regard, because they're at home and quarantined comparably to what we did this last spring with the full dismissal. So, and I've kind of already addressed question number 4 for Jenny there. This question comes from Kale. It says, what does band and orchestra look like under the COVID-19 guidelines? Some of those scenarios are spelled out here, so I'd encourage you to read the guidebook here. It's 100 pages, but I got to tell you, it's really light reading, and it kind of goes through, again, a bunch of scenarios and ventilation and all these health department guidance that we're expected to adhere to as we bring children back into our buildings. So we are not permitted to hold large-scale gatherings on school property. I think people think, well, you're going to have 400 people in a building. Let's break that down for a second. Pre-COVID, 400 kids could be in lunch all together. 400 kids could potentially be out on the recess playground together, but not post-COVID. Now that we're in a pandemic, your classes and your lunch schedules, your in-between class times are going to be structured and controlled to ensure that there is not student interaction except with the core group and class. And so comparably, being spread out on the playground, more recess times. We've talked about this in some of the other videos. So we're not going to be able to host performances for our band and orchestra on school property. What we're going to do is look at our live stream options comparable to what we're doing right now. Maybe Facebook Live is a good option. Maybe putting it on the school's YouTube channel is a good option. But those classes, because we're not going to be using our auditoriums, our gymnasiums, some of our outdoor spaces, some of our schools have some incredible courtyards and amphitheaters and other spaces that could be utilized prior to the weather turning cold. And so there's going to be some creativity on the part of the local school to identify some of those circumstances, what they could do to potentially spread those students out and use those other spaces that won't be utilized, frankly, in the midst of and the heart of this pandemic. So your choir class, your band and orchestra could utilize the auditorium, be spread out on the stage, and be able to socially distance while still being able to see the instructor and practice and perform using their instruments. What will theater performances and stage crew classes look like? We could see some scenarios where some productions of plays could go on with masks, unfortunately, but we're in the midst of a pandemic with as much social distancing as possible. And again, shared in a live stream format. There are copyright restrictions on many of these plays, and so we're not allowed to broadcast some of those things. So we might have to get creative, extend performance times, bring in small audiences that meet county guidelines for gatherings, and make sure that they're spread out in the stadium. Sports is not going to be unlike that at all. In many instances, under the High School Activities Association guidance that has been made in conjunction, again, with the state health guidance, you're going to see limited ability for people to come and participate and view sports activities. And so band and orchestra, theater performances, no different in terms of how the audiences are able to participate and the students work and practice in those scenarios. Again, all under the guidance of the health department and the information they provided. Okay, I went through that question. Let's see. Oh, sorry, I'm just looking at this. Want to make sure. I've answered all these questions. I've gone through all this, so this is good. Let me just wrap up by going through a couple of other things on the website itself. And I think, again, with respect to masks and social restrictions, let's talk about the bus itself. You don't wear a mask, you're not going to be allowed to come onto a bus. We will provide masks for our students. We will provide masks when you get on a bus. There's going to be a little hand sanitizer station right there to wash your hands. In between each run, the bus driver will actually go through and sanitize with that electrostatic sanitizing cleanser. Again, everybody will be wearing masks on the bus because there is absolutely no ability to socially distance on a bus itself. We would ask students who are at the bus stop to socially distance, even though there is no ability to do so once they are on the bus itself. So again, if you look at the health department information they provided, they consider exposure being in close contact with somebody for an extended period of time, generally over 15 minutes. Fortunately, our bus rides don't last that long in most cases. They do in some, though. We've already talked about that. Let's talk about distance learning for a second, because I think that's a critical question. We certainly want to encourage families who have the ability to utilize that option. It's a great option for some families. I want you to know my kids, I have 5 kids. 2 of my kids absolutely thrived on distance learning. No problems, no situation, no concerns whatsoever. We're able to maintain their grades, great interactions. Our teachers did a phenomenal job. But 2 of my students really struggled. And one of my kids was kind of a mix between. So we know and recognize that all kids are unique and different. And again, that's why we've provided lots of options for our families. That being said, distance learning is going to look different. We want our distance learning, there was no in-person instruction in the spring. We want our distance learning to be a lot more structured. We want it to be simplified so it's easier for families to provide the support. So we have consolidated to the number of apps that we're utilizing and the platforms that we're using. Again, we want that to mirror in-class instruction to the highest degree possible, because at some point there's going to be probably a switch or an adjustment between the two, as we've kind of discussed throughout this Q&A. So we do want to make sure that that instruction mirrors that. So there's going to be a lot more structure to that, and there's going to be a lot more consistency in resources. We have worked throughout the entire summer. I had a teacher reach out to me and she said, I have been working all summer to produce more distance learning content. And I feel sad about that. I'm glad that teachers want their own content, but at the same time, we knew that they were going to need content, and so we have been having teacher cohorts be paid and contracted through the summertime to produce that content for our teachers so that they would not have to reinvent the wheel and produce and go through a lot more burdensome process of doing more work. So with respect to that, is it going to be 100% content? No, every teacher has their own individual things they want to bring into their instruction, so they're going to need to provide some of that on their own. But a lot of this content is literally pull down into their Canvas or their Google Classroom platform. Again, we will provide Chromebooks, and we will also provide over 1,000 hotspots that'll be checked out like a library book if a student does not have access to Wi-Fi at home. Additionally, we will be launching our Wi-Fi buses again this fall into areas where we have identified where there's a greater need for Wi-Fi access for our families. That being said, as I mentioned at the beginning, 12,000 plus students who never were able to participate in any form of distance learning despite all those resources being brought to bear. Looking what a hallway looks like, you're going to see hallway spaces being broken out, asking people to stay to the right, no lockers, no stopping between classes. Let's go from this class, let's go to that class, let's spread out 6 feet, and let's stay to one side of the hallway. And so you could see an extended, periods be extended so kids have more time to get to those classes because they're going to be spread out more, and at the same time even reduced so that they don't have time to interact. Those are all within your local school plans, and I'd remind families to make sure you review those plans as you make these decisions about distance or in-person instruction. A lot of questions about our video. We produced a video. On average, our class sizes are about 900 square feet in Granite School District. So we had some math teachers actually produce some layouts that would allow, if I'm sitting in my desk, not at the front of my desk, not behind my desk, leaning back, not leaning side to side, but sitting right at the heart of my desk, that I have the ability to be 6 feet away from all the other students. We could put up to 30 desks in a 700 square foot area. Are our class sizes 30? No, they are not. That was never intended to be a reflection of what our class size expectations are. Some are smaller, some are larger. But that was for a 700 square foot classroom, and our average class size is over 900 square feet. So is there some possibility to provide some social distancing with desks in our classrooms? The answer is yes, but is that 100%? No, and no one's claiming that it is or that it ever intended to be. So we fully recognize that, again, social distancing will not be possible in every situation or scenario. But when I do go to the lunchroom and when I queue in that lunch line, I'm going to have a little dot on the floor, just like when I go to a restaurant, that tells me where to queue up. There's going to be additional plexiglass and other protective measures to keep the lunch workers protected, the food protected, and the students protected from each other. When they go to eat in those spaces, they're going to be spread out because they're going to be removing their masks. There's going to be limited amount of people in the lunchroom at any given time. All this should be laid out in those school level plans. I would encourage you again to go and review those plans. That being said, we've discussed a lot of different things here. Want to make sure, again, that people go through and identify some of your most specific health-related questions are all answered in this incredible guide from the State Health Department. And again, we are looking for some additional language that clarifies what a modified quarantine looks like to help reassure some of our families' concerns. Last but not least, we're a team. We're together. Whether you're a teacher, whether you're a family member, whether you're a student, whether you're a parent, whether you're a district administrator or a school level administrator, we're all here to provide quality educational opportunities for our kids, and we need to work together. So the communication at our school level with your family and your teacher and your principal cannot be understated. If there's questions or concerns, let's make sure those get answered. We have limited staff in our schools right now because our teachers are off contract. And some of our school staff are actually not back until the end of July. It's now August, so they're now coming back into the school. So if you try to reach out to school and nobody was there to answer the phone or they're on the other line, I just encourage you to go back and take the time. Now that those school level plans are done, I think principals' time is freed up a little bit more to be able to address some of those things. And then teachers will be trained on all these protocols as they come back into our schools in the next week or so. IEPs will need to be reevaluated given the pandemic circumstances. Just so appreciate your patience as we all work to get our questions answered, to go through these different scenarios. You're going to have more questions, and I fully respect that is going to happen, whether you're a teacher or parent. So please feel free to continue to reach out to us. We sent you the email address where you can submit that information. That being said, we do appreciate your patience and that you look for that information on the resources that we've provided up until this point in time. There are scenarios or situations. I want to be unequivocal about this point, and I've said that before, but really just got to drive this home. This is our first pandemic. I had a parent tell me we should have had all this prepared back in March, and to some degree, we did have some pandemic information and plans in place, but to the degree of providing in-person instruction, what that looks like under the guidance from the health department, and looking to our health expert to provide that information, that has taken time. We have spent thousands of hours on this at the district level to give our schools the framework. They have spent hundreds of hours developing their plans with their school level leadership teams, with their teachers, and those plans are now all there. These plans are not perfect. They never will be. There is not a perfect plan. I've seen in other school districts different people angry about different things, and I joke around with my counterparts all the time, who's mad at them this week? And to some degree, we need to make sure we're addressing all those concerns. That is not a problem, and we're so happy to continue to strive to do so. That being said, In some areas, the parents are really angry. In some areas, teachers are really angry. In some areas, both are very angry. Hey, let's stop being so frustrated and angry. Look at the options that are available to us, communicate with us, and let's work together. I want to thank our GEA, our Granite Education Association. We have such an incredible relationship with them. Through the midst of the approval process of that plan, we developed, in conjunction with the GEA, an awesome frequently asked question link specific for our teachers. And we continue to get questions from them and are working in coordination with them to provide the best information we possibly can. That being said, we're going to continue to make decisions based on the guidance we receive from the state and the state health department and our local health partner, Salt Lake County Department of Health. So thank you for our teachers, for the Granite Education Association, for the help and support as we work to develop these things. Thank you to our parents for your patience as we work out these plans. Just know this, after day 1 and day 2, day 10, day 12, day 82, we're going to see something at either a local school level or the district level and say, that needs to change. That needs to be different. We need to do that differently because we've never done this before. And so I just want to extend in advance my appreciation to you for making those things known to us and at the same time giving us a chance to remedy those challenges and those circumstances. And we'll continue to bring those questions to the health department. They know us, they love us, hopefully, and they've been so gracious and patient with us as we have presented those scenarios to get answers to those questions. And I have no doubt that they will continue to do so. They've been such great partners through all this. Our goal, ultimately, at the end of the day, is to make sure that we go through this pandemic, we implement these plans and strategies to meet every student's needs and to do so in a way that is safe to the highest extent possible for all of our employees. And we know that's not feasible in every exact situation and scenario, but to the degree that we're able to do that, that is our goal, is to make sure that we can do this in the safest manner possible. So again, if you have questions or concerns, let us know. Let's work together to get through those questions and those scenarios. Again, appreciate your patience and support as we work through this pandemic.